Silo is back, and the Season 3 premiere, Who Are You?, might be the biggest departure from Hugh Howey's novels the show has ever attempted. If you've read the books, you already know Season 3 is supposed to adapt Shift, the second novel in the trilogy. What you might not expect is just how much showrunner Graham Yost and his writers reshaped that story to make it work on screen. So let's break down exactly what changed between the page and the premiere, starting with the biggest one of all. The elephant in the room. Juliette shouldn't even be here. Here's a fact that surprises a lot of newer fans. In the novel Shift, Juliette Nichols barely appears. The book is almost entirely a flashback, focused on totally different characters, and Juliette doesn't show up in any meaningful way until the very end, setting up the third novel, Dust. On the page, Shift is basically Juliette's origin story happening somewhere else, without her. Obviously, that was never going to work for a TV show built around Rebecca Ferguson. Yost has said directly that he told Hugh Howey the series simply couldn't follow the book's structure, because Ferguson's face is on every poster, and the story needed her front and center. So the writers invented an entirely new engine to keep Juliette in the spotlight during the Before Times season: memory loss. In the show, Juliette survives the fire that killed Bernard, but the smoke and trauma wipe out most of her memories. That amnesia plot doesn't exist anywhere in the books. It's a brand new invention designed to give Juliette a reason to be central to a season that, on paper, doesn't belong to her at all. Donald becomes Daniel. In Howey's novels, the young congressman at the center of the Before Times storyline is named Donald Keene. On the show, he's Daniel. That's not a typo, and it's not a subtle rebranding. Yost has been very blunt about the reasoning. He simply didn't want a major character sharing a first name with a certain former and current US president. In his words, it was too confusing, and he didn't want the show accidentally making a political statement it never intended to make. So the name was quietly swapped, and Ashley Zuckerman's character became Daniel Keene instead of Donald. Senator Thurman changes gender. This is probably the single change fans talk about the most. In the books, the senator, Paul Thurman, one of the chief architects behind the entire Silo project, is a man. In the show, that character is now a woman. Yost has explained this wasn't a random swap for the sake of it. The writers wanted to build a much richer, more complicated relationship between the senator and Daniel than existed in the source material, and gender-swapping Thurman gave them room to do that. It also reshapes the dynamic around Thurman's daughter, Anna, whose relationship to her parent, and to Daniel, now plays very differently than it did in the novels, where Anna was written as Donald's ex-girlfriend and the senator's daughter in a father-daughter dynamic. Camille Sims gets a much bigger role. If you've read the books, Camille Sims was barely a footnote, a background character with almost no influence on the plot. The show has completely rebuilt her. In Season 3's premiere, Camille isn't just present, she's one of the central antagonists. She's revealed to be secretly drugging Juliette to suppress her memories, and she's working hand-in-hand with her husband Robert Sims as the two of them consolidate power inside Silo 18 under the guise of restoring democracy. None of that scheming exists for this character on the page. It's a wholesale reinvention. A new villain that isn't in the books at all: the algorithm. The books do explore the idea of memories being wiped on a mass scale, but it's handled very differently. In Howey's world, that mass amnesia is engineered by a character named Salvador Quinn as a long-term contingency to keep Silo populations docile and unaware of past rebellions. The show takes that broad concept and turns it into something much more science fiction flavored. A mysterious, disembodied artificial intelligence called the algorithm, which is apparently directing Robert Sims, Camille, Paul Billings, and others behind the scenes. We don't get many answers about what the algorithm actually is in Episode 1, but it's clearly being set up as one of the show's biggest new threats. And it simply doesn't exist in this form in the novels. Bernard's death is rewritten. The official story inside Silo 18 is that Bernard died when the fire from Juliette's cleaning breached his suit. The premiere reveals that's a lie. Robert Sims actually strangled Bernard to death himself, then had the body destroyed to cover it up. This kind of direct, deliberate murder plot for a power grab is a show-only twist, layered on top of a character death that plays out very differently across the source material. A compressed, restructured before times. In the novel, the pre-apocalypse storyline is essentially the entire book. It dominates almost the whole of Shift. On the show, that same era is compressed into roughly half of a season, interwoven episode by episode with Juliette's present-day story in Silo 18. Characters, timelines, and the order certain revelations happen have all been shuffled around to fit that split structure. Facts that are simply stated outright in the novel are instead staged as dramatic reveals in the show, and some side characters, like Avi Nash's Lucas Kyle, have been given far more complicated motivations than they had on the page. Charlotte's storyline and the memory loss mirror. The show introduces a new emotional parallel that doesn't map directly onto the books. Daniel's sister Charlotte, a military pilot, survives a classified mission but suffers a traumatic brain injury that erases much of her memory, deliberately mirroring what's happening to Juliette in the present day. It's a clean example of the writers building connective tissue between two timelines that, in Howey's original structure, never actually needed to relate to each other this directly. A different tone and a different world, literally. Even visually, the Before Times sections mark a departure. Yost has talked about wanting these scenes to feel bright, sunlit, and grounded in a recognizable near-future Washington, D.C., a deliberate contrast to the dim, claustrophobic look that's defined the show since Season 1. He's described the tone here as closer to a political thriller with a romantic charge, something he says simply wasn't part of the novel's version of these events in the same way. One odd real-world coincidence. Not a book change, but worth mentioning. The season's plotline involving a U.S. military strike on Iran was written and filmed well before a real strike occurred in 2025 under a very similarly worded operation name. The production reportedly had to quietly adjust some on-screen news crawl text so it didn't read as a direct reference to real headlines. The big picture. Taken together, none of these changes are small tweaks. Yost has openly said this season required the heaviest lifting of any season so far, and that Hugh Howey was fully on board with reshaping his own material this aggressively. The core bones are the same: the silos, the control of memory, the slow unraveling of the truth. But almost everything around those bones, from character names to genders to entire subplots, has been rebuilt from the ground up to serve a 10-episode television season instead of a flashback-heavy novel. If you're coming to Season 3 as a book reader expecting a faithful adaptation of Shift, Episode 1 alone should tell you to throw those expectations out. This is less an adaptation and more a reinvention built around the same skeleton. And depending on how you feel about the books, that's either the most exciting thing about this season or the most controversial. That's everything that's changed so far in Episode 1. Let me know in the comments which change surprised you the most, and subscribe for the breakdown of Episode 2.